Hiya, I'm Jasper, and welcome to your video review for Ahsoka. It's a Star Wars TV show on Disney Plus, starring Rosario Dawson, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Ray Stevenson, and David Tennant. So, as always, I'm going to give you the good, the bad, and the furry. To start with furry, it's a Star Wars thing, so there's some, anthropomorphic aliens, but I would say not as many in this one so far. So, moving on to the good and the bad. So, to start off with, it's Ahsoka, not Ashoka, because I was misspelling it, because I've never seen the animated Star Wars shows, and that's one of the things that I feel like with this show, there is so much that I'm really hoping is just explained in the TV shows that I have never and will never watch, because they seem to reference, oh, Admiral Thrawn this, and, Apprentice that, and this, that, and the other thing, that I'm just none of that is explained in here. There's just so much references to the past things to do with Ashoka that I'm just I know just from general, media knowledge that she was Anakin's apprentice in one of the TV shows or both the TV shows. Something happened. I don't know. They mentioned it briefly in this thing that I was his apprentice, and then I'm not. Okay, cool. So I'm just reviewing the first 2 episodes here because those are all that's out so far. Because it's an 8-episode series, I don't feel like going in depth on the first 2 episodes should be considered spoilers for the whole series. So I am going to talk about all of the episodes that have come out so far. So spoiler alert for those 2 episodes, but not for the whole series. Okay, so to start off with, the opening tomb thing with Ahsoka was just, it was so much slower than it needed to be. If you remember, I don't remember if it was the 3rd season or what of The Mandalorian, where he goes down into whatever Mandalorian pit thing on their home planet, and he explores around there, and he finds a thing, and then he gets captured by the beetle thing or whatever. You remember how long that felt? Well, this is a shorter sequence that feels even longer because of just how slow-paced it is. And that's kind of one of the things about this show in particular, and I would say for most of the Star Wars shows other than Andor, all kind of share the problem of they probably would have been okay as movies, or shorten them to 3 episodes, or maybe 6 episodes or something. But because they have to fill in this 6, 8, 10 episode season with not enough content, they just are cutting things so long. The pauses between people talking. It's not so much the individual lines, but it's just hey, did you see that sunrise? Yes, I did. You could have cut that a little closer. I'm not getting all the extra context and subcontext and cues and reading everything up. You don't need that much time between each piece of dialogue to understand nuance and to get nuance, okay? You just don't. So that was just really frustrating throughout. What I will say on the good side of things is that the CGI is amazing as always. It's a Star Wars thing, and I'm continuously blown away by how good, the ship designs are awesome, so that's cool, and the vistas, the scenery where they are shot or CGI'd and to look like they're being shot, it's just really, really pretty. And the CGI is just so good. Disney owns Lucasfilms. Disney also owns the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So why did the Ant-Man 3 suck so bad with CGI when they can make this level of CGI for a television show? I don't know. But I would say the only bad CGI thing that I really noticed was when Ahsoka and the general person are on this cart getting driven somewhere. They do a couple of close-up shots of back and forth of their faces and having conversation. And the background, I think that it could have looked more realistic, but I think because of just the shallow depth of field that they were going for to make the background look blurry, I think they were trying to duplicate a camera effect, but it looked a little off in my opinion. So, yeah. But other than that, fantastic. So why can't they do whatever they're doing here for the Marvel Cinematic Universe like Ant-Man 3 again? I don't know. But maybe part of the reason that they were able to achieve that is because there's not a whole lot of characters in this. Like, there's a few, but there's not so far. Like, the actors that I listed, that's kind of like who people care about so far. And there's a couple of scenes with some extras, but not as many as I was expecting for, an hour and a half of content. So maybe they just cut budget on people and spent it on the CG. I don't know. But one of the other things that they might have cut budget on is especially the opener. Like the opener where we first get introduced into Ray Stevenson. Like, that captain and his whole bridge crew, I don't know if it's just because cosplay is so good, or if because they were trying to match the, episode 4 style, episode 4, 5, and 6 style of, what they could achieve with costumes at the time. But it looked cheap. It looked cheap and cosplayery and not worn in like that. And then the dude making the announcement. And speaking of the dude making the announcement of like, oh, this has been an amazing thing, and they got like the cameras on him and the speakers and the echo and reverberations clearly talking to maybe the whole city, maybe the whole world, I don't know. But he's like, oh, and I would like to thank one of our people, Bendy Wiswani, or whatever the fuck her name was. And he looks over and, oh, she's not there. And this platform seems to have just like, I'm hoping that like background is just lowered in place, because it's just this platform that comes out of the middle of the top of a building. And there's just a whole bunch of politicians out there like giving their little speechy thing. Where did she disappear to? Like, how was she able to disappear and none of you knew it? And then the whole thing later on, like the bit is like, oh, slipped my mind, must have forgot. And yet the guy was like, she was just here. How does she slip away from when you start talking to when you like motion back at her? And I don't know, that is an unbelievable embarrassment for a politician to like, oh, there's this person, oh, they're not here, oh, so weird, because you're honoring that, like, come on, there's no way that would happen. So just kind of dumb, in my opinion. And yeah, so, but getting back to the costumes, so yeah, costumes look a little cheap in the beginning bits of minutes, but later on with some other people they looked a little bit better. I will also say that this really reminded me, or at least brought to my attention, how similar Sith robes are to Jedi robes, when they're all like with the head coverings and whatnot and their arms in like this position. Like, I'm like, oh, they are pretty similar. Like, you don't think about it, because in episode 2, like 1, 2, and 3, the Sith were always in black, and then the good guys were in like the tans and lighter colors. But yeah, no, they're actually pretty similar when you think about it. So, getting back to some of the characters. Why is the apprentice also a Mandalorian? So, Ahsoka's apprentice, who she has some beef with, and they stopped hanging out, or stopped being an apprentice, and whatever, and we still don't know why, and it's so weird, because Mary Elizabeth Winstead's general character knows that something happened, has been friends with them for years. It's like, oh, based on your history, I'm not surprised, but then later in that same conversation, I'm like, what actually happened between you guys? Like, do you know the history, or do you not know the history? Make up your mind. And speaking of the general, I'm just gonna mention briefly that I was surprised that she was a general. I was like, there ain't no damn way that you are old enough to have the military or political, whatever other experience you need to have in order to be a general. There ain't no way. And I looked up how old Mary Elizabeth Winstead is, and she's like 39-ish. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, that's actually believable. I could see that. But, like, I guess bad on her for still looking so hot and young while being almost 40 years old. And I don't know, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's not her fault that she looks so good, like, in my opinion, too good to be, like, a general. But I still have a gripe with her being a general, because she is all by herself except for some droid on her ship. Like, do you guys not understand what generals do and how generals are busy and like what their responsibilities are? Because I don't know, it just seems to me like most media that I've seen, generals have like a staff of people, or at least, more than just one droid that just follows them around everywhere. And they're also pretty fucking busy with all of the people that they're in charge of. But for some reason, they're just like, nah, she's not busy at all. She has time to go to this planet all by herself, and like, just why? Why is she all by herself? And why does she have time to do this? And also, general, I will say that just because you're a general doesn't mean you have a need to know about every single classified piece of thing out there. There's compartmentalization for a reason, so that one general who goes all evil can't be like, hey, I know the nuclear launch codes because I'm a general, so there is nothing classified beyond my level. Like, no, there kind of is. So, yeah, there are just some real ups and downs with the generalness of her, but I just in general, I don't buy it and why she's being there and all that jazz. Like, no, like maybe if they'd been like, oh, I'm gonna go on vacation and I'm gonna use some leave time to go with you to this planet for the things, but nope. It seems like just part of her duties, such as they are. So whatever. But getting back to why The Apprentice is a Mandalorian, it doesn't make any sense to me. From having watched the Mandalorian TV show and seeing the Star Wars movies, I don't see how you could be a Jedi and a Mandalorian, because it seems like those are very time-consuming and philosophically different schools. It's like being a Buddhist Muslim. You can be a Buddhist, you can be a Muslim. I'm not really buying a Buddhist Muslim because there's some philosophical differences between the two. So I don't get it, and it just is very distracting. So, whatever. David Tennant as the voice of the robot. So David Tennant you might know from Fright Night, Good Omens, or one of the Doctors, whatever. But I really like him in general, and I think he does good as the robot. Like, his voice is good. I feel like they might be layering on a bit too much synthesizingness to like undertone his voice to make it to make it sound more robotic, but it's not too bad. It's okay. But in general, his performance is good. It's just the extra things are, I think, interfering a little bit. But yeah. So I'm probably not going to continue watching this show because it's boring. It's just boring. I don't care. We're 2 episodes in. If they had even just done 1 episode, I could see why they did the 2. Like, A, because it's kind of a trend for shows to do that. But B, like, nothing interesting happens in the first one. Like, Ray Stevenson is amazing, and sad that he apparently died. I hope he finished this show and maybe something better than this, but it's not great. It is so stretched for content that it shaves believability. Like, so Qui-Gon Jinn gets stabbed, admittedly through the center, and dies. The Apprentice gets stabbed, admittedly through like more of the side, but she gets stabbed through and through, and is back and ready to be actionable in a couple days, a couple hours. It's kind of unclear, but very, very fast from a thing that killed the like Jedi Master who taught people how to communicate from after the dead. So I don't know about that. Seems a little weird, but it also seems to be a Star Wars thing at this point that Qui-Gon's going to be the only one who dies from that, because there was another Star Wars TV show where a person gets stabbed through the center with a lightsaber and doesn't die as well. So I guess, I don't know, maybe whatever, it's fine. But little dumb there. Also, like, you stab through the center and then you pull back out. I don't buy that. I think she would have stabbed through the center and been like, oh shit, somebody's coming, or hey, let me just solve this problem and slice upwards, so yeah, definitely dead. As opposed to like, ooh, pokey poke, okay, bye-bye. No, don't buy that. It's dumb. So, yeah, this show, way too long, way too stretchy, and the dialogue is just referencing so much that I'm never going to watch, so I feel like a show should stand on its own. You shouldn't have to watch the previous things in order to appreciate it by itself, and I haven't watched those, and I'm not going to. And I'm probably not going to continue on this one, because there's dumb things like the lightsaber battle with her and the other things. Like, I think it could have gone differently. I'm sure we're supposed to be intrigued by who the masked guy is with the flippy lightsaber, but I'm not. I don't care. I just don't. So, yeah, maybe eventually I'll get around to the episodes, but at this point, don't anticipate it from me. So, thumbs down, boring, dumb. CGI is excellent, though. So, that's all I have for this one. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you at the next one. Bye.